Close your eyes now, and let me take you back through the turning pages of time, to a place where winter was not just a season, but a great silent test of human endurance, where families on the American frontier faced nights so cold that the very air seemed to crystallize around their breath, and where the simple act of sleeping through until dawn required wisdom passed down through generations like precious heirlooms, wrapped in stories and survival. We are walking now, you and I, through the amber light of a November evening in 1847, somewhere along the endless prairie of what will one day be Nebraska, and I can see ahead of us a small homestead, little more than a single room carved from the earth itself, its sod walls thick as a man's arm span, rising barely above the rolling grassland like a gentle hill that someone has hollowed out and made into a home. The wind carries the sharp scent of coming snow, that metallic tang that every frontier family learned to recognize, the way a sailor learns to read the color of distant clouds. And inside this dugout home, I can see the warm glow of a small fire flickering against walls lined with newspapers and old quilts, anything to keep the endless cold from seeping through. The Hendricks family is preparing for what they know will be the longest, coldest night yet this season, and I watch as Martha, the mother, moves with the quiet efficiency of someone who has learned that survival depends not on grand gestures, but on 1,000 small, careful preparations. She is banking the fire now, not letting it roar high and bright as it might on a milder evening, but building it low and steady, the way her grandmother taught her back in Ohio, using twisted hay and dried buffalo chips, anything that will burn slow and long through the darkest hours. The flames cast dancing shadows across her face as she works, and you can almost feel the weight of responsibility she carries, knowing that her husband John and their 3 children, little Sarah, Thomas and baby Mary, will depend on the warmth she creates tonight to see them safely through to morning. John is outside still, though the temperature has dropped below freezing, and his breath forms small white clouds that dissipate quickly in the dry air, and I can see him checking the animals one final time, making sure the few chickens they managed to bring west are secure in their makeshift coop built against the south wall of the house, where they will catch what little warmth radiates through the sod. The cow, their one precious cow that means the difference between milk for the children and going without, stands in a rough shelter of prairie grass and salvaged boards, her thick winter coat already growing in. But even so, John drapes an old blanket across her back, knowing that a sick cow in winter means more than inconvenience, it means catastrophe. Inside, the children are already beginning their evening routine, though routine is perhaps too grand a word for the simple, necessary preparations they make each night as winter deepens. Sarah, who at 8 years old has already learned to think like someone much older, is helping her mother drag the thin mattresses closer to the fire, arranging them so that the whole family can sleep together in the warmest part of their small room. You can see in her movements that careful balance between childhood and the premature wisdom that frontier life demanded, the way she handles the baby with competent gentleness, while still stealing glances toward the small collection of corn-husk dolls that represent her only toys, lined up carefully on a shelf carved into the earth wall. Thomas, barely 6, but already serious beyond his years, is gathering up every blanket, every scrap of fabric, every piece of clothing that can be spared from daily wear, creating what his family calls their winter nest. That pile of warmth they will all share when the fire burns low and the cold begins to creep in through every crack and crevice. His small hands work methodically, sorting the thicker wool blankets to the bottom, the lighter cotton ones on top, arranging them with an intuitive understanding of insulation that would impress modern survival experts. Knowledge gained not from books, but from necessity, from nights when the wrong arrangement meant waking up cold and stiff and exhausted. Martha lifts the baby from her small wooden cradle, and I can see how she holds her close, feeling for any sign of chill, any indication that little Mary might be struggling with the cold that has already begun to settle over the prairie like a vast invisible blanket. Babies were the most vulnerable on the frontier. Everyone knew this, their small bodies unable to generate enough heat to keep themselves warm through the long winter nights. And so they became the center around which every evening's preparations revolved, the tiny sun around which the family's warmth orbited. The smell of the evening meal still lingers in the air, a simple stew made from dried beans and a bit of salt pork, cooked in the iron pot that hangs from a hook driven deep into the earthen wall above the fire. And though the portions were small, everyone ate their fill because they understood that food was fuel, that their bodies would burn whatever nourishment they could provide through the long cold hours ahead. Martha has saved back a small portion of the stew, keeping it warm near the coals, knowing that John will need something hot when he finally comes inside, his body temperature lowered from the time spent outside in the cutting wind. Now I can hear John's footsteps approaching the door, that heavy, deliberate tread of someone moving carefully in the gathering darkness, and when he pushes inside, bringing with him a swirl of cold air that makes the fire dance and flicker, I can see how quickly Martha moves to help him out of his coat, how she takes his hands in hers to warm them, rubbing them briskly between her palms while he stands close to the fire, steam rising from his damp clothes. His face is red from the cold, but his eyes are calm, satisfied with the evening's preparations, and he nods to Martha in that wordless communication that married couples develop, especially those who have learned to depend on each other completely for survival. The family gathers now around their simple table, little more than a board stretched between two wooden crates, and John leads them in their evening prayer, his voice low and steady in the flickering firelight, thanking God for the day's safety, for the food they have shared, for the warmth of their small shelter, and asking for protection through the night ahead. The children's voices join his small and clear in the earthen room, and you can hear in their words not just the rote recitation of memorized prayers, but genuine gratitude, the kind that comes from understanding how fragile their situation really is, how much they depend on forces beyond their control. As the prayer ends, the work of preparing for sleep begins in earnest, and I watch as the family moves with the coordinated efficiency of a well-rehearsed dance, each person knowing their role, each task flowing seamlessly into the next. John adds more fuel to the fire, not wood because wood is scarce here on the treeless prairie, but twisted bunches of dried grass and the precious buffalo chips they have gathered and stored for exactly this purpose, fuel that burns with a different quality of warmth than wood, less fierce but steadier, more reliable for the long haul through a winter night. Martha begins the process of undressing the children, but not in the way you might expect, not removing their clothes entirely, but rather loosening them, taking off shoes and heavy outer garments while leaving on the essential layers that will provide warmth through the night. Each child has a set of clothes designated specifically for sleeping, garments that are worn only at night and kept as clean and dry as possible, because wet or soiled clothing in winter can mean the difference between comfortable sleep and dangerous chilling. Little Sarah stands patiently while her mother removes her shoes and outer dress, revealing underneath a long flannel nightgown that reaches nearly to her ankles, and over this Martha pulls a thick wool stockings, hand-knitted from yarn that was precious beyond measure on the frontier, each stitch representing not just labor, but careful conservation of materials that might be impossible to replace. The child's movements are slow and drowsy, but I can see how she cooperates fully with her mother's ministrations, understanding even at her young age that this ritual of preparation is not optional, not something to be rushed through or resisted, but a matter of life and death importance. Thomas submits to similar treatment, his small body disappearing into layers of wool and flannel, and I notice how Martha checks his hands and feet, warming them between her own, if they feel too cold, making sure that circulation is good, that there are no early signs of the frostbite that could develop even inside their shelter if the temperature drops low enough. The baby, of course, receives the most attention, wrapped in layer after layer of soft cloth, blankets within blankets, until she resembles a small warm bundle with only her tiny face visible, breathing steadily in the firelight. John, meanwhile, is making his own preparations, but his focus is on the fire and the room itself, checking the small ventilation hole near the ceiling to make sure it is not blocked, because even in their desperate need for warmth, they know that fresh air must circulate, or they risk suffocation from the carbon monoxide that builds up in sealed spaces. He adjusts the position of their few pieces of furniture, moving them to create better airflow while still maintaining the maximum benefit from the fire's heat, a delicate balance that requires both knowledge and intuition. Now the family begins to settle into their sleeping arrangement, and I can see how carefully thought out their positioning is, how much consideration has gone into who sleeps where and why. Martha and the baby will be closest to the fire, where the warmth is most reliable, but not so close that sparks or shifting logs could pose a danger. John will sleep on the outside edge, farthest from the fire but closest to the door, positioned so that he can quickly respond to any emergency, any sound from the animals outside, any sign that their small shelter is in danger. The children arrange themselves between their parents like small, warm satellites. Sarah next to her mother where she can help with the baby if needed. Thomas next to his father where he can learn by observation how a man protects his family through the night. Each person has their own blanket, but these individual coverings are supplemented by larger blankets that cover 2 or more people, creating layers of warmth that trap body heat and create small microclimates of comfort. As they settle down, I can hear the wind picking up outside, that endless prairie wind that never seems to stop, and now it carries with it the first few flakes of snow, tiny crystals that tap against the single small window like rice thrown at a wedding. The sound is gentle now, almost musical, but everyone in the room knows that this is just the beginning, that by morning the world outside may be transformed into something white and trackless and infinitely more dangerous than it was when the sun went down. Martha nurses the baby one final time before sleep, and I can see in her face that mixture of tenderness and worry that defines motherhood on the frontier, the way she holds her child close while simultaneously listening to every sound from outside, every shift in the wind, every change in the fire's crackling rhythm. The baby's small sounds of contentment seem to fill the earthen room with warmth that has nothing to do with temperature, the warmth of life continuing, of love persisting even in the face of hardship that would break many modern families. John lies on his back, staring up at the low ceiling made of rough boards and sod, and I can almost see his thoughts as he runs through tomorrow's tasks, the things that must be done if they are to continue surviving out here on the edge of civilization. He needs to check the animals first thing, make sure they have survived the night, then see to the fire, then assess how much fuel they have left, and whether it will be enough to get them through another day like this one. His breathing is steady and controlled, but there is a tension in his shoulders that speaks to the weight of responsibility he carries, the knowledge that his family's survival depends on decisions he makes, preparations he completes, risks he chooses to take or avoid. The fire begins to burn lower now, its flames less dramatic, more businesslike, settling into the slow, steady burn that will, if they are lucky, last until dawn. The room grows dimmer, but not completely dark, because the coals will continue to glow for hours, providing both light and heat, and the family has learned to read the fire like a clock, knowing by the color and intensity of the coals approximately what time it is, how many hours remain until morning. Sarah's breathing deepens and slows, and I can see her small body relaxing into sleep, her face peaceful in the red glow from the fire. Even in sleep, she stays close to her mother, one small hand resting on Martha's arm, maintaining that physical connection that provides comfort beyond warmth. Thomas, too, is drifting off, but his sleep is more restless, his body twitching occasionally as if he is running or playing in his dreams, perhaps remembering warmer days, easier times, the freedom of summer when survival did not require such constant vigilance. Martha remains awake longer than the others, her eyes moving between her children and the fire, that eternal maternal watchfulness that never fully rests. Even in sleep, she adjusts blankets, checks breathing, monitors the baby's temperature with hands that have learned to detect the slightest changes, the smallest signs that might indicate developing illness or dangerous cooling. Her own comfort is secondary, always secondary, to the well-being of her family, and I can see in her face the kind of selfless devotion that frontier life both demanded and created. The wind outside grows stronger, and now I can hear it not just tapping at the window, but beginning to howl around the corners of their small shelter, testing every joint, every crack, every weak point in their defenses against the cold. The sound is lonely and wild, the sound of a world that cares nothing for human comfort, human need, human survival, and yet there is something almost comforting about it too, the way it makes their small warm space seem even more precious, even more worth protecting. John's breathing changes, deepens, and I know he is finally allowing himself to drift towards sleep, though even in relaxation his body remains alert, ready to respond to any sound that might indicate danger. This is the sleep of the frontier father, never complete rest, but rather a state of relaxed vigilance, conscious awareness dimmed but not extinguished, the part of him that protects his family, never fully off duty. The baby stirs slightly, makes small sounds of contentment, and Martha's hand moves automatically to pat her gently, a gesture so natural and unconscious that it speaks to the deep rhythms of motherhood. The way caring for children becomes as automatic as breathing, as essential as heartbeat. The child settles back into deeper sleep, her tiny face relaxed and trusting, unaware of the cold wind outside, the precarious nature of their situation, the thousand things that could go wrong before morning. Now the fire burns lower still, its flames barely visible above the glowing coals, and the room grows quieter, filled with the soft sounds of sleeping people, the gentle whisper of breath, the occasional rustle of someone adjusting their position under the blankets. The warmth from the fire radiates outward in waves, creating a small circle of comfort in the vast cold night, and you can almost feel it yourself, that precious warmth that means the difference between life and death, between peaceful sleep and dangerous exposure. The snow outside is falling more steadily now. I can hear it building up against the walls of their shelter, and while this might seem ominous, it is actually providing additional insulation, another layer of protection against the cold. The Hendricks family knows this, understands that snow can be both enemy and ally, dangerous when it blocks travel or threatens to collapse a roof, but helpful when it forms a natural barrier against the wind and cold. Hours pass and the fire burns steadily lower, but it does not go out, because John built it correctly, banking it properly, giving it enough fuel to last through the critical hours before dawn, when temperatures reach their lowest point. The coals glow like small red jewels in the darkness, and their heat continues to warm the air around the sleeping family, maintaining that delicate balance between comfortable sleep and dangerous cold. Martha wakes once, as mothers do, responding to some sound or movement that only she could detect, and I watch as she checks each child in turn, touching foreheads to assess temperature, adjusting blankets, making sure that everyone is breathing easily and resting comfortably. She adds another piece of fuel to the fire, not because it needs it immediately, but because she knows that in another hour or two it will, and by then she may be sleeping too deeply to wake naturally. The baby dreams, her small face changing expression, as if she is seeing things that bring her joy, and perhaps she is. Perhaps in her dreams, she is warm and safe, and surrounded by abundance, the kind of abundance that frontier families could only imagine. Her breathing is steady and strong, a sound that fills Martha with relief each time she listens for it, because a baby's breath is the most precious sound in the world to a mother, especially a mother living on the edge of survival. Thomas mumbles something in his sleep, words too soft to understand, but his tone is contented, and his small body remains relaxed under his layers of blankets. Children on the frontier learned early to sleep deeply when they had the chance, to rest completely during the safe hours so that they would have energy for whatever challenges the next day might bring. His dreams may be filled with adventures, with the kind of play and freedom that daylight hours rarely allowed during the harsh winter months. Sarah sleeps like the older child she is becoming, more quietly than her brother, but with occasional small movements that suggest she too is dreaming, perhaps of spring, of warmer weather, of days when survival does not require such constant attention to detail. Her hand still rests on her mother's arm, maintaining that connection even in sleep, and you can see in her peaceful face the trust that children have in their parents, the absolute faith that somehow, some way, the adults will keep them safe through whatever comes. John's sleep is deeper now, but still not complete, still ready to respond to any unusual sound, any change in the wind's pattern, any indication that their small world is threatened. His face in the firelight looks older than his years, lined with the kind of worry that comes from carrying responsibility for other people's lives. But there is strength there too, determination, the kind of quiet courage that built the American frontier one family at a time. The fire burns on, steady and reliable, its coals glowing red in the darkness, providing the warmth that keeps this small family alive through another night, another test of their endurance and preparation. The heat radiates upward and outward, warming the air they breathe, keeping their small shelter comfortable enough for deep, restorative sleep, and you can almost feel it yourself, that precious warmth, that barrier against the cold world outside. Morning is still hours away, but the family sleeps peacefully, secure in their preparations, confident in their simple but effective strategies for survival. They have done what they can, prepared as well as they know how, and now they rest, gathering strength for another day, another challenge, another small victory in their ongoing battle against the elements. The wind continues to blow outside, carrying more snow, building drifts against their shelter, but inside, the Hendricks family sleeps warm and safe. Proof that human ingenuity and determination can triumph over even the harshest conditions, that with careful preparation and mutual support, families can survive, and even thrive in circumstances that would seem impossible to overcome. And so they sleep, these frontier families, not just the Hendricks, but thousands like them across the vast American West, each family in their own small shelter, each fire burning low but steady through the night, each child dreaming of spring, while their parents stand guard against the cold, creating with their combined efforts a network of warmth and safety that stretches across the continent, small lights of human resilience glowing against the darkness. Let me take you now to another place, another time, but still those same cold nights when survival depended on wisdom and preparation, and we find ourselves walking through the deeper winter of 1852, in the mountains of Colorado Territory, where the Garrett family has built their cabin in a small valley protected from the worst of the wind, though not from the cold that settles into these high places like a living thing, patient and persistent and utterly without mercy for those who are not ready for its embrace. Their cabin is different from the Hendricks dugout, built of logs with the bark still on, chinked with mud and moss, and anything else that will keep the wind from finding its way between the walls, and I can see how they have banked earth and stones around the foundation, creating additional insulation, additional protection against the cold that seeps up from the frozen ground. The roof is made of split logs covered with sod, and snow has accumulated on top of it, several feet deep by now, creating a natural blanket that actually helps keep the interior warm. Inside, the cabin feels different too, larger than the dugout, but somehow more intimate, the log walls creating a sense of enclosure that is both protective and comforting. And the family has arranged their living space around a central fireplace, built of river stones, its chimney drawing properly, its hearth wide enough to accommodate the large pieces of wood that are more readily available here in the mountains than they were on the treeless prairie. Samuel Garrett is adding wood to the fire, real wood, pine and aspen, that he cut and split during the autumn months when the weather was still mild enough for such work. And I can see how carefully he selects each piece, choosing logs that will burn slowly and steadily, that will produce heat rather than just flames, that will last through the long night ahead. His movements are economical, practiced, the movements of someone who has learned that every action in winter must serve multiple purposes, that waste of any kind can quickly become dangerous. His wife Elizabeth is preparing their evening meal, but the process is different here than it was in the Hendricks dugout, because the mountains provide different resources, different challenges, different opportunities for survival. She is cooking venison tonight, meat from a deer that Samuel shot and butchered just 2 days ago, and the smell of it cooking fills the cabin with a rich, nourishing aroma that speaks to the body's deep need for protein and fat during the cold months, when the simple act of staying warm burns calories at an accelerated rate. Their children, 2 boys named Michael and David, are older than the Hendricks children, old enough to take on more substantial responsibilities, and I can see them working together to prepare their sleeping area, moving furniture, arranging blankets, checking that the shutters over the windows are secure and tightly fitted. The older boy, Michael, who is nearly 12, moves with a competence that would be remarkable in a child from an easier environment, but here it is simply necessary, simply the way children grow up when their survival depends on learning quickly and well. David, 2 years younger, but equally serious about his tasks, is responsible for banking the fire for the night, and I watch as he carefully arranges the logs so that they will burn down to coals in the proper sequence, creating a base of heat that will last until morning. His small hands work with tools that seem too large for him, but his movements are confident, sure, the result of careful instruction and supervised practice, because on the frontier there is no room for children to remain children longer than absolutely necessary. Elizabeth calls the family to their evening meal, and they gather around a table that Samuel built himself from pine planks, its surface worn smooth by use, scarred by the knives and tools of daily life, but solid and sturdy, a piece of furniture that will last for generations if the family is fortunate enough to survive and prosper in this harsh place. The food is simple but substantial. the venison supplemented by preserved vegetables from their small garden, bread made from flour that must be rationed carefully, because the nearest town is 50 miles away and snow has made the journey impossible until spring. As they eat, I can hear the wind picking up outside, different from the prairie wind, more focused somehow, channeled by the mountain valleys into something that sounds almost alive, almost purposeful in its assault on their small cabin. The logs creak slightly under the pressure, but they hold, seasoned and strong, fitted together with the kind of careful craftsmanship that frontier life demanded, where a mistake in construction could mean death for an entire family. Samuel leads the evening prayer, his voice steady and strong in the warm cabin, and the words he chooses speak not just to gratitude for the day's blessings, but to the specific challenges they face, asking for protection through the night, for the continued health of their animals sheltered in the small barn attached to the cabin, for the strength to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The children's voices join his, and you can hear in their words the kind of faith that is tested daily, strengthened by adversity, deepened by the constant awareness of how much they depend on forces beyond their control. After dinner, the family settles into their evening routine, but it is different from what we saw with the Hendricks family, adapted to their different circumstances, their different resources, their different challenges. Elizabeth brings out a small piece of sewing, mending clothes by the firelight, because winter is the time for such indoor tasks, when the weather makes outdoor work impossible, but provides long evenings for the kind of detailed handwork that keeps a family clothed and comfortable. Samuel cleans and oils his rifle, not because he expects trouble, but because the weapon is too important to their survival to neglect. And in the mountains there are predators, bears and mountain lions that might be driven by hunger to investigate human habitations, especially during the deep cold when their usual prey becomes scarce. His movements are methodical, careful, the ritual of maintenance that ensures the gun will function properly if it is needed, and the children watch him work, learning by observation the skills they will need when they are old enough to take on the responsibility of protecting their own families. The fire burns brightly, casting dancing shadows on the log walls, and the cabin feels warm and secure, a small island of comfort in the vast cold wilderness. But everyone inside understands how precarious their situation really is, how dependent they are on their preparations, their supplies, their ability to work together as a family unit. The nearest neighbors are miles away, impossible to reach in weather like this, and so they must be completely self-sufficient, completely prepared for whatever the night might bring. Michael is reading aloud from the family's one precious book, a worn copy of the Bible that has traveled with them from their former home in Missouri, its pages yellow and soft from handling, its binding cracked but still holding together, and his young voice fills the cabin with familiar words, comforting passages that connect them to their faith, their heritage, their sense of place in a larger story that transcends their immediate struggles for survival. David listens while working on a small project of his own, carving a piece of wood with a knife that his father made for him, learning the skills that will serve him throughout his life on the frontier, the ability to create useful objects from raw materials, to repair things that break, to make do with whatever is available, rather than depending on manufactured goods that may be impossible to obtain. Elizabeth's needlework continues by the firelight, her hands moving steadily, economically, repairing a tear in one of the boys' shirts, reinforcing seams that have begun to separate under the stress of hard use, extending the life of clothing that must last until they can be replaced, which may not be possible for months or even years. Every stitch represents conservation, careful stewardship of resources that are too precious to waste. As the evening progresses, the family begins the gradual transition towards sleep, but it happens slowly, naturally, without the rush that characterizes modern bedtime routines, because they understand that the process of preparing for a winter night cannot be hurried, cannot be done carelessly if they want to wake up warm and rested in the morning. Samuel checks the fire one more time, adjusting the logs, making sure the coals will burn properly through the night, because if the fire goes out completely, relighting it in the morning will be difficult and dangerous, and the cabin will lose heat rapidly in the intense mountain cold. Elizabeth helps the boys prepare for sleep, but again the process is different from what we might expect, focused not on getting completely undressed, but on arranging layers of clothing and blankets that will provide warmth without restricting movement, because even in sleep, they must be ready to respond quickly to any emergency. any threat, any change in circumstances that might require immediate action. The boys' sleeping area is close to the fireplace, but not directly in front of it, positioned to receive heat without being exposed to sparks or sudden shifts in the fire's behavior. And I can see how much thought has gone into every aspect of their arrangement, how every detail serves multiple purposes, contributes to both comfort and safety. Their beds are simple wooden frames strung with rope and covered with straw mattresses, but they are warm and dry and adequate for their needs. Michael and David settle under layers of wool blankets, quilts made by their mother and grandmother, coverings that represent hours of careful work, planning, preparation for exactly this kind of situation. And you can see in the boys' movements that they understand the value of what they have, the precious nature of warmth and comfort in a world that provides neither easily or cheaply. Samuel and Elizabeth make their own preparations for sleep, but theirs is the sleep of parents, never complete, never entirely free from the awareness of responsibility, and I can see in their faces the kind of weariness that comes not just from physical labor, but from the constant mental strain of making decisions that affect their family's survival, of being always alert to potential dangers, potential problems that must be anticipated and prepared for. The cabin grows quieter as the family settles into sleep, but the sounds from outside seem to grow louder, more insistent, the wind howling through the mountain passes, the creak and groan of trees bending under the weight of accumulated snow, the occasional crack of a branch breaking under pressure, sounds that speak to the wild, untamed nature of the world just beyond their walls. But inside, the fire burns steadily, its light and warmth creating a zone of safety and comfort, and the family sleeps peacefully, secure in their preparations, confident in their ability to survive another night, another test of their endurance and resourcefulness. The cabin holds against the wind, the fire burns without faltering, and the Garrett family rests, gathering strength for another day, another small victory in their ongoing battle against the elements. The snow continues to fall outside, adding to the accumulation that will soon make travel impossible, that will isolate them completely from the outside world until spring. But they are prepared for this isolation, have planned for it, stocked their cabin with enough food and fuel to last through the long winter months. And so they sleep without anxiety, without fear, trusting in their preparations and their ability to work together as a family to overcome whatever challenges the morning might bring. Now let me carry you forward in time, but not far, to the winter of 1855. And we find ourselves in a very different sort of shelter, walking quietly through a Lakota winter camp, somewhere in the Dakota Territory, where the approach to surviving the coldest nights is different again, based on different traditions, different wisdom, different understanding of how to live in harmony with the natural world, rather than in opposition to it. The tip is stand in a careful arrangement that takes advantage of the natural features of the landscape, sheltered by a grove of cottonwood trees that break the force of the wind, positioned near a small stream that provides water even when the surface is frozen, because the flowing water underneath keeps at least some sections from freezing completely solid. Each tipi is anchored securely against the wind, its poles buried deep in the ground, its covering stretched tight and smooth to shed snow and rain. I can see the buffalo running family preparing for the night, and their movements have a different rhythm, a different philosophy than what we observed with the frontier farming families, because their approach to winter survival is based on thousands of years of accumulated wisdom, generations of learning how to live successfully in this environment without fighting against it, without trying to impose their will upon it, but rather finding ways to work with the natural forces, to use them rather than resist them. The tipi itself is a marvel of engineering, designed specifically for the kind of extreme weather conditions that characterize this part of the continent, its conical shape deflecting wind rather than presenting a flat surface for it to push against, its flexible construction allowing it to bend and sway without breaking, its materials chosen for their ability to provide insulation, while remaining light enough to transport when the band needs to move to follow the buffalo herds or find better shelter. Inside the tipi, the fire burns in a carefully constructed pit at the center, and the smoke rises naturally toward the smoke hole at the top, drawn upward by the draft, created by the tipi's shape and the wind passing over its peak. But what is remarkable is how efficiently this simple fire heats the entire space, how the curved walls reflect and concentrate the heat, creating a warm environment that extends all the way to the edges of the dwelling, where the family's sleeping robes are arranged in a careful pattern around the central fire. Buffalo Running is tending the fire, but his approach is different from what we have seen before, based on a deep understanding of how different types of wood burn, how to create the exact kind of heat needed for the long winter night ahead, how to use the fire not just for warmth but for light, for cooking, for the spiritual comfort that comes from the ancient human relationship with flame. He uses a combination of hardwood and softwood, buffalo chips and dried grass, creating a fire that will burn steadily but not too hot, warming the air without making the tipi stuffy or uncomfortable. His wife White Dove is preparing their evening meal, but the food is different from what we have seen in the farming families' homes, based on different resources, different preservation techniques, different understanding of what the body needs to survive and thrive in extreme cold. There is pemmican, that concentrated mixture of dried meat, fat and berries that provides enormous nutritional value in a small portable form, and there is soup made from bones and dried vegetables, rich and warming, and perfectly adapted to the needs of people who must maintain their body heat through the long cold night. Their children, a boy named Swift Horse and a girl named Morning Star, are helping with the evening preparations, but their tasks are different too, based on their family's nomadic lifestyle, their need to be ready to move at short notice, their understanding that survival depends not on accumulating possessions, but on developing skills, knowledge, adaptability. Swift Horse is checking the tipi's anchor points, making sure the stakes are secure, that the wind has not loosened any of the fastenings that keep their shelter stable and weatherproof. Morning Star is arranging the sleeping robes, but these are not simple blankets like the farming families use. They are buffalo hides that have been carefully tanned and prepared, each one representing not just warmth, but a connection to the animal that provided it, a recognition of the sacrifice made, understanding of the sacred relationship between human survival and the natural world. The robes are thick and warm and incredibly durable, capable of providing comfort and protection in temperatures that would be deadly without adequate covering. The family gathers for their evening meal, and the ritual is different from what we have observed before, beginning not with a Christian prayer, but with words of gratitude spoken in Lakota, acknowledgement of the spirits that govern the natural world, recognition of their dependence on forces greater than themselves, thanks for the food they are about to eat, the warmth of their fire, the protection of their shelter, the presence of their family members around the circle. As they eat, I can hear the wind outside, but it sounds different here, less threatening somehow, because the tipi is designed to work with the wind rather than against it, to use its force for ventilation and stability rather than simply enduring its assault. The curved walls channel the airflow in ways that actually help draw the smoke up and out through the smoke hole, creating a natural ventilation system that keeps the air inside fresh and comfortable, even when the tipi is sealed against the cold. Buffalo Running speaks to his children as they eat, telling them stories, passing on knowledge, sharing the wisdom that has allowed their people to survive and prosper in this harsh environment for countless generations. His words are about more than just survival techniques. They are about understanding their place in the natural world, about respecting the forces they cannot control, about finding ways to live in harmony with the environment rather than in opposition to it. Swift Horse listens carefully, asking questions, absorbing not just information, but ways of thinking, ways of seeing, ways of understanding the world that will serve him throughout his life. At 8 years old, he already knows things that many adult settlers never learn, can read the signs of changing weather, understand the behavior of animals, find his way across trackless prairie, using stars and wind patterns that others cannot even perceive. Morning Star, though younger, is equally attentive, learning the skills that women need to master, understanding how to prepare food, how to work with hides and fibers, how to create the many things that their nomadic lifestyle requires, but also learning the deeper wisdom, the spiritual understanding that connects all of these practical skills to the larger patterns of life and death, growth and renewal, that govern the natural world. As the evening progresses, the family begins their preparations for sleep, but the process is different again from what we have seen before, based on different understandings of how to maintain body heat, how to arrange sleeping areas for maximum warmth and comfort, how to use the natural heat generated by human bodies to create a warm microclimate inside the tipi, even when the temperature outside drops far below freezing. The sleeping robes are arranged in a specific pattern around the fire, with the parents' area closest to the entrance, positioned so that buffalo running can respond quickly to any threat or emergency, but also so that their body heat contributes to the overall warmth of the tipi. The children's sleeping area is deeper inside, closer to the back of the tipi, where the heat tends to accumulate, where they will be warmest and most protected through the night. But before they settle down to sleep, there is another ritual, different from the Christian prayers we have heard in the farming families' homes, but serving a similar purpose, connecting the family to something larger than themselves, providing comfort and reassurance in the face of the unknown dangers that night might bring. Buffalo running offers tobacco to the four directions, speaks words of protection, asks the spirits to watch over his family through the dark hours ahead. White Dove checks each child carefully, feeling for signs of cold, adjusting their robes, making sure they are comfortable and warm, but her approach is different from what we have seen before, based on different understanding of how children's bodies respond to cold, how to recognize the early signs of problems, how to prevent rather than simply treat the effects of exposure. The fire burns lower now, its flames dancing in the draft that moves through the teepee, and the family settles into their sleeping robes, but the arrangement is different from what we might expect, with family members sleeping closer together than the farming families do, sharing body heat more directly, creating small pockets of warmth that will last through the night even if the fire burns down to coals. Swift Horse and Morning Star settle into their robes on either side of their parents, close enough to share warmth, close enough to receive comfort if they wake during the night, and you can see in their peaceful faces the kind of security that comes from being part of a family that has mastered the art of survival, that has developed over generations the skills and knowledge needed to thrive in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Buffalo running and White Dove lie quietly in their robes, but like all parents in harsh environments, their sleep will be light, alert, ready to respond to any change in the wind, any unusual sound from outside, any indication that their small family might be in danger. Their faces in the firelight show the same mixture of love, concern and determination that we have seen in all the frontier parents, the recognition that their children's survival depends on constant vigilance, careful preparation, wise decision-making. The tipi grows quiet as the family drifts towards sleep, but the silence is different from what we heard in the log cabin or the dugout, filled with different sounds, the whisper of wind through the tipi poles, the soft crackle of the fire, the gentle breathing of sleeping people, the occasional sound from the horses tethered nearby, all combining to create a sense of peace, of safety, of human life continuing in harmony with the natural world. Outside, the wind continues to blow, carrying snow and cold, but inside the tipi, it is warm and comfortable, proof that human ingenuity can find many different ways to survive and thrive in challenging environments, that there is no single correct approach to the problem of staying warm through a cold night, but rather many different solutions, each adapted to specific circumstances, specific resources, specific understandings of how to live successfully in the natural world. The fire burns steadily through the night, tended occasionally by Buffalo running, who wakes naturally at intervals to check on his family, to add fuel if needed, to make sure everything remains secure and comfortable, and then settles back into his robes, confident in his preparations, trusting in the wisdom passed down through generations, the accumulated knowledge that has allowed his people to survive and prosper in this challenging environment for thousands of years. And so they sleep, this Lakota family, warm and safe in their tipi. Another example of human resilience and adaptability, another small light of survival glowing against the darkness and cold, part of the great network of families, communities, peoples who have learned to make their homes in every corner of this vast continent, each in their own way, each with their own wisdom, each contributing to the great story of human persistence in the face of adversity. Now the night deepens around all of these families, the Hendricks in their dugout, the Garretts in their log cabin, Buffalo Running's family in their tipi, and I can see them all sleeping peacefully, each in their own way, each protected by their own understanding of how to survive the coldest nights, how to create warmth and safety in a world that offers neither easily, how to build small islands of comfort in the vast ocean of wilderness and weather that surrounds them. The fires burn on, in hearth and pit and carefully banked coals, each one a small victory against the cold, each one proof that human determination and ingenuity can triumph over even the harshest conditions. And the families sleep, gathering strength for another day, another challenge, another opportunity to prove that love and preparation and mutual support can overcome almost any obstacle. The wind blows through the prairie grass, through the mountain pines, through the cottonwood groves, carrying snow and cold, and the endless challenge of winter survival. But inside their shelters, the frontier families rest peacefully, secure in their preparations, confident in their abilities, trusting in their understanding of what it takes to see the dawn of another day, another chance to build their lives in this harsh but beautiful land they have chosen to call home. And in the morning, when the first light begins to creep across the eastern horizon, they will wake refreshed and ready, will tend their fires and check their animals, and begin the work of another day, another small step in the great journey of building homes and families and communities in the American wilderness, another chapter in the ongoing story of human courage and determination and love. The night reaches its deepest point, when cold and darkness seem most triumphant, most capable of defeating human efforts to create warmth and safety. But in their small shelters scattered across the wilderness, these families sleep on peacefully, proof that human determination can triumph over nature's harshest tests, that love and preparation and mutual support can create islands of comfort even in seas of hardship, that the human spirit, properly directed and carefully nurtured, can find ways to thrive under conditions that would seem impossible to overcome. And slowly, gradually, imperceptibly, the night begins its long, slow turn toward morning, toward the first faint lightening of the eastern sky, that will signal another day survived, another victory won, another step forward in the great journey of building homes and families and communities in the American wilderness. But for now, for these precious hours of deep night, these frontier families rest in the warmth they have created, the safety they have built, the love they share, sleeping peacefully through the coldest hours, gathering strength for all the challenges and opportunities that tomorrow will surely bring. And slowly, gradually, imperceptibly, the night begins its long, slow turn toward morning, toward the first faint lightening of the eastern sky, that will signal another day survived, another victory won, another step forward in the great journey of building homes and families and communities in the American wilderness. But for now, for these precious hours of deep night, these frontier families rest in the warmth they have created, the safety they have built, the love they share, sleeping peacefully through the coldest hours, gathering strength for all the challenges and opportunities that tomorrow will surely bring. But before we let them rest completely, let me take you to one more place, one more family, one more approach to surviving the coldest nights, because the story of frontier winter survival is vast and varied, filled with ingenuity born of necessity, wisdom earned through hardship, love expressed through the simple act of keeping one's family alive through another night, another season, another year in this harsh but beautiful land that so many chose to call home, despite its challenges. We find ourselves now in the winter of 1858, in the Utah Territory, where the Jensen family has built their small adobe home in a valley that catches the sun during the day, but releases its heat quickly to the clear, dry air once darkness falls, and where survival depends not just on staying warm, but on conserving the precious water that makes life possible in this desert environment, where winter brings not just cold but the constant challenge of maintaining adequate moisture in air so dry it can crack lips and steal breath from unprepared lungs. Their home is built of sun-dried bricks made from the clay-rich soil of their valley, mixed with straw and grass to provide binding and insulation, and the thick walls hold heat during the day, releasing it slowly through the night in a natural temperature regulation system that their Mormon pioneers learned from Mexican builders, adapted from Spanish colonial techniques, refined through trial and error, until it provides the most efficient heating and cooling possible in this demanding climate. Peter Jensen is tending their evening fire, but his approach is different again from all the others we have witnessed. Because wood is scarce in this desert environment, precious beyond measure, and most of their fuel comes from sagebrush and greasewood, plants that burn hot and fast, requiring different fire management techniques, different understanding of how to create sustained heat from materials that want to flare and consume themselves quickly, leaving only ash and the need for more fuel. His wife Anna is preparing their evening meal, but her cooking reflects the particular challenges of desert living, using techniques that conserve not just fuel but water, creating foods that will provide moisture as well as nutrition, understanding that in this dry climate, the human body loses water constantly, through breathing, through skin, through every function that maintains life, and that winter survival depends as much on staying hydrated as on staying warm. Their children, 4 in number now, because frontier families needed many hands to survive, are engaged in activities that reflect their desert environment. The oldest boy, Nephi, checking the water storage systems that are as crucial to their survival as their heating systems, while his sister Mary helps their mother with food preparation that incorporates techniques for making small amounts of water serve multiple purposes, being used first for cooking, then for cleaning, then for the animals, nothing wasted in an environment where waste can quickly become fatal. The 2 youngest children, Joseph and little Sarah, are playing quietly near the fire, but even their play reflects their environment. Games that teach them to move carefully, to avoid spilling precious water, to understand fire safety in a home, where the walls themselves are flammable if they become too dry, where survival depends on constant attention to the balance between enough heat to stay warm and too much heat that could ignite their shelter. The evening meal they share is different from all the others we have witnessed, featuring foods that provide both nutrition and moisture, stews and soups that help maintain body fluid levels while supplying the energy needed for heat production, bread made from wheat they grow themselves in carefully irrigated plots, supplemented by preserved fruits that provide vitamins and natural sugars that help the body metabolize other nutrients efficiently in the challenging desert environment. After dinner, the family gathers for their evening prayers, but the words Peter chooses reflect their particular circumstances: gratitude for the day's water ration, for the continued health of their animals, for the structural integrity of their adobe home, for protection from the winds that can strip moisture from human bodies with frightening efficiency, leaving dehydration and death in their wake if people are not constantly vigilant about maintaining adequate fluid levels. Anna brings out handwork that demonstrates their desert adaptations, sewing and mending done by firelight, but also working on projects that help them conserve and manage water, creating cloth containers and filtration systems, understanding that in their environment every drop of moisture is precious. Every technique for capturing, storing and conserving water represents the difference between life and death for her family. The children help with evening preparations that we have not seen in other households. Nephi checking the seals around windows and doors not just for heat loss but for moisture retention, understanding that their adobe home can become dangerously dry if too much air circulation occurs, while Mary helps her mother prepare humidifying systems, containers of water placed near the fire to add moisture to air that would otherwise become so dry it would damage their lungs, their skin, their ability to sleep comfortably. Peter works on maintenance tasks that reflect their unique challenges, checking the adobe walls for cracks that could allow heat loss or moisture infiltration, understanding that their home is both shelter and climate control system, requiring constant attention to maintain the delicate balance between warmth and humidity that makes survival possible in their demanding environment. As the family prepares for sleep, their routine includes activities that we have not seen before, each person receiving not just warm clothing and bedding, but also moisture replacement, small sips of water carefully rationed to maintain hydration through the night, understanding that desert air continues to steal moisture from human bodies even during sleep, even when they are not actively exerting themselves. The sleeping arrangements in the Jensen home reflect their desert environment, with sleeping areas positioned to take advantage of heat radiating from the adobe walls, but also arranged to maintain optimal humidity levels, with containers of water placed strategically to provide moisture without creating conditions that could promote mold or other problems in their earthen home. Nephi and Mary settle into beds that incorporate special features adapted to desert living. Mattresses filled not just with straw but with materials that help regulate both temperature and humidity, understanding that comfortable sleep in their environment requires attention to both warmth and moisture, both heat conservation and proper air quality. Joseph and little Sarah are tucked into their small beds with extra care. Because children are more vulnerable to dehydration than adults, their small bodies less capable of conserving moisture, less able to communicate their needs clearly, requiring more careful monitoring. more frequent attention to their comfort and health throughout the long night. Peter and Anna settle into their own sleep preparations with the knowledge that comes from years of successful adaptation to their challenging environment, understanding that survival in the desert requires different techniques, different priorities, different constant attention to factors that families in moister climates never need to consider, but that here make the difference between comfortable sleep and dangerous problems. The fire burns lower as the night deepens, but Peter has arranged it to burn in a way that provides both heat and humidity, using techniques that create steam as well as warmth, maintaining the delicate balance between temperature and moisture that their desert environment demands, and the family sleeps peacefully, secure in their understanding of how to create comfort in one of the most challenging environments that frontier families chose to inhabit. The adobe walls continue to release stored heat through the night, their thermal mass providing steady temperature regulation, while the moisture management systems that Anna has arranged continue to function, maintaining air quality that allows restful sleep without the respiratory problems that can develop when desert air becomes too dry for human comfort. Outside, the desert wind blows across their small valley, carrying cold and dryness that would quickly kill unprepared travelers. But inside their carefully designed adobe home, the Jensen family sleeps comfortably, proof that human ingenuity can find ways to thrive, even in environments that seem hostile to human habitation, when that ingenuity is informed by necessity, guided by experience, refined through the constant testing that frontier life provided. And so they sleep, this desert family, their breathing easy in air that maintains proper humidity, their bodies warm under coverings that provide insulation without trapping excessive moisture, their small home functioning as both shelter and life support system. Another example of how frontier families learn to work with their environment rather than against it, finding ways to use natural forces and materials to create safety and comfort, even in the most challenging circumstances. Now, as we have visited all these families, witnessed all these different approaches to the fundamental challenge of surviving the coldest nights, let me take you one final time through the deep hours of night, when all of these families sleep most deeply, when their fires burn lowest, when the cold presses most insistently against their defenses, testing everything they have built, everything they have prepared, everything they understand about the art of staying alive in harsh environments. The Hendricks family sleeps in their dugout, and I can see how Martha wakes once more to check on baby Mary, her maternal instincts alert even in sleep to any change in breathing, any shift in temperature, any sign that might indicate developing problems, and finding everything peaceful, she settles back into her own rest, confident in their preparations, secure in the knowledge that they have done everything possible to ensure their family's survival through another night. In the garret cabin, Samuel's eyes open briefly, as a particularly strong gust of wind tests their log construction, and he lies listening for any sound that might indicate structural problems, any creak or groan that might suggest their shelter is being pushed beyond its limits, but hearing only the normal sounds of a well-built cabin weathering a mountain storm. He closes his eyes again, trusting in his own craftsmanship, in the strength of the materials he chose, in the wisdom of the construction techniques he learned from other mountain families. Buffalo running stirs slightly as the wind shifts, changing the way air flows around their tipi, and his experienced senses evaluate the new conditions automatically, determining that the change poses no threat, that their shelter remains secure, that his family continues to sleep safely in the warmth their tipi provides. And he settles back into sleep, trusting in the ancient wisdom that designed their shelter, in the techniques perfected through thousands of years of Plains Indian survival. In the Morrison cabin, David wakes as his body adjusts to the altitude-related changes that occur during sleep, and he checks his family carefully, listening to breathing patterns, feeling for signs of altitude sickness, ensuring that everyone is adapting well to their challenging environment, and finding all peaceful. He allows himself to return to sleep, knowing that his vigilance has been rewarded with another successful night of high-altitude survival. Lars Carlson sleeps deeply, confident in the sophisticated heating system he built according to his grandfather's instructions, and the masonry heater continues to function exactly as designed, radiating stored heat steadily through the night, maintaining comfortable temperatures throughout their small cabin. Proof that generations of Scandinavian survival wisdom can be successfully transplanted to American frontier conditions when properly understood and carefully applied. Jean-Baptiste wakes briefly as some sound from their animals alerts his Voyager-trained senses, but determining that it represents no danger, only the normal movements of animals settling for the night, he returns to sleep beside laughing water, their unique synthesis of survival traditions, continuing to prove its effectiveness through another harsh winter night in the remote Montana wilderness. In the Utah desert, Peter Jensen's sleep is lighter than that of families in moister climates, his body automatically monitoring hydration levels, responding to the constant challenge that desert living presents, but finding everything balanced properly, the temperature and humidity levels in their adobe home, maintained within the narrow ranges that desert survival requires. He sleeps peacefully, trusting in their careful adaptations to one of the most demanding environments on the frontier. And so they all sleep, these frontier families, each one representing a different approach to the same fundamental challenge, each one demonstrating human adaptability, creativity, determination in the face of conditions that would quickly defeat unprepared people, each one contributing to the great story of how families learned not just to survive, but to thrive in the American wilderness, during the years when survival depended entirely on individual preparation, family cooperation, community support, and the accumulated wisdom that passed from one generation to the next like precious inheritance. The fires burn on through the deepest part of the night, some fed with prairie grass and buffalo chips, others with mountain pine and aspen, still others with desert sagebrush and greasewood, each one representing the conquest of cold through human understanding of combustion, heat management, fuel conservation, the fundamental principles that allow human beings to create warmth even in environments that offer little natural comfort. The children sleep most deeply of all, their small bodies relaxed in the security that comes from being part of families that have mastered the art of winter survival, their dreams perhaps filled with the adventures and freedoms that warmer weather will bring, but their sleep peaceful because they trust completely in their parents' ability to keep them safe, warm, protected through whatever challenges the night might bring. The parents sleep less deeply, their rest interrupted by the automatic vigilance that frontier survival demands, but their sleep is adequate, restorative, sufficient to prepare them for another day of the constant attention to detail that winter survival requires, and their faces in the firelight show the quiet satisfaction of people who have met challenge with competence, hardship with preparation, danger with wisdom earned through experience. The wind blows across prairie and mountain and desert, carrying cold and snow, and the endless test of winter survival. But in their small shelters scattered across the vast American wilderness, these frontier families rest in the warmth they have created, the safety they have built, the love they share, proof that human determination can triumph over nature's harshest challenges, when that determination is informed by knowledge, guided by experience, supported by the kind of mutual care that makes families more than the sum of their individual parts. And gradually, so slowly that it can barely be perceived, the night begins to fade, the deep cold begins to lose its grip, the first faint suggestion of dawn begins to touch the eastern horizon, promising another day, another opportunity, another chance for these frontier families to continue building their lives in this challenging but beautiful land that they have chosen to call home, despite all its difficulties, all its demands, all its tests of human endurance and adaptability. They sleep on through these final hours of night, gathering the last of their rest, storing energy for the day ahead, trusting in their preparations, confident in their abilities, secure in the knowledge that they have survived another night, passed another test, proven once again that human families can create homes and comfort and safety, even in the most challenging environments that this vast continent could offer to those brave enough, determined enough, wise enough to accept its demanding embrace.